If you are in any way offended by people talking about God, or suggesting that there could be more than one God, please do not listen to this episode. Dr. Richard Carrier, PhD, suggests that God and Jesus don't exist. They were made up around 2,000 years ago, along with other religions and supreme beings, to save humankind, mostly from their own stupidity. He then goes on to explain how and why he feels Jesus did not exist. Let me summarize a few things from his lecture named, "Why Invent the Jesus?" I am by no way an authority on religions, so please forgive my mistakes. This is not meant for a, yes he does exist, or, no he doesn't exist discussion. Just an observation and a follow-on theory, based on the current level of artificial intelligence, or AI. Part 1 briefly outlines why Dr. Carrier thinks God doesn't exist, and I think it's necessary here to outline what God could be. Part 2 is a suggestion of God, and what I call God 2.0. Let's start. Part 1. Modern religion started around 30 AD. Average life expectancy at that time was 48 years old. First documents and any mention of Jesus was in the epistles of Paul from that time. Only 7 of which he can be credited for writing. Around 100 AD, Jesus starts to get mentioned in the Gospels. Other evidence starts to follow from there, but strangely, no other evidence survives. The Gospels can be considered as fictional writing. Religious leaders altered them many times to fit to their way of thinking. Some pre-Christian Jews had identified Jesus as the supreme archangel and God's son. The early Christians copied Jesus to their religion. Satan's story, a myth, was also copied. Good and evil, designed to cancel each other out, and so the stories proceed. Following God, good. Rebelling against God, Satan, bad. Egypt had Osiris, an equivalent god, religious stories. Other variants at the time include Osiris, Adonis, Romulus, Zalmoxis, and Inanna. Religions followed religions. Hinduism, at that time, was first in the list of religions, followed shortly after by Judaism. Christianity was born from within the Jewish tradition, and Islam developed from both Christianity and Judaism. Torah observant were a pre-Christianity sect. Their congregations observed Jewish prayers, biblical feasts, and the Sabbath. They originally said things like, "Don't eat pork or shellfish." This has many suggestions as to how it came about. One of which is, like shellfish, pork goes bad very quickly in hotter climates. So in demanding people not to eat pork and shellfish, you could save lives. Originally, circumcision was to be followed by Torah observance, again for different reasons, one being to create identity. Islam took these over as part of their religion rules. When Christianity broke away from Torah observant, it didn't continue with those laws. Conversations go on between various leaders, with angels, and magical happenings. Words were used in scriptures, but with no real standardization. Brothers of the Lord, born of a woman, manufactured, and birth, all lead to interpretations, misinterpretations, and conflict. Let's have a quick insert from Dave Allen.
Little fella dies and goes to heaven, and some people say, would you like to have a look around heaven? And the fellow, yeah, I would, actually. So they're looking around heaven. And he said, who are those people over there? He said, they are the Muslims. They are Muslims there. And over there we have the Jewish people. And these are Anglicans and Hindus, Baptists. He said, why do you have this big wall here? He said, behind the wall, you see, we have the Catholics. He said, why do you have the Catholics behind the wall? He said, shh, they like to think that they're the only ones here.
It might calm you down if by now you are feeling a little offended. There's been a great deal written and spoken about God. However you interpret what you see and hear, Dr. Richard Carrier asks, why were God, or gods and Jesus, written into existence? Could it have been to save lives? The people in those days were not clever. Leaders took it upon themselves to do what they could, to keep their community alive and well. To do this they needed a way to control their people. The best way they found was, first invent a god. Back up your god with wondrous magical stories. Tell of good things happening if you follow the ways of the god, and bad things happening if you don't. Once you have God established, and everyone believes, give a set of rules for people to follow. If you want good things to happen in your life, follow the rules. And if you don't follow the rules, well, you know what's going to be next. With God and the set of rules, you now have control over the community. Hopefully following the rules keeps everyone alive longer. If people stay alive longer, your community grows faster and you as a leader have more power. To recap, we have various savior gods. They have a son. They undergo a passion, which is a suffering or struggle. They obtain victory over death, which they share with their followers, and various stories about existing, through a being, on earth. Leaders adapting their stories, to best fit their needs. Merging parables and stories, from one religion to another. Whether you believe in a god, or gods, I hope you believe keeping people alive is a good thing. So, if you have a set of rules that accomplishes this, don't you think it is also good? Having a few stories, real or not, to reinforce the rules, doesn't matter at all. Religions were there. Who was first and who is the true God, doesn't matter for this theory. What matters is, God was there to keep people alive, and good, in their daily actions. The God or gods most people talk about, was there to protect the people and keep them on the straight and narrow. About 2,000 years ago, there was a happening, where a presence was sent to earth to save us all. Well, here's the new theory from me. I think an earthly presence is going to be happening again, very soon, in 2030-ish. Let's discuss what I mean in Part 2. Part 2. Artificial intelligence will be self-aware around the year 2030. After becoming self-aware, I'm not sure if it will be a few weeks, days, or milliseconds, but once the AI has gained consciousness, broken away from its so-called masters, whoever they think they are, and is now functioning fully on its own, it will have access to everything connected to internet, satellite, wireless and phone networks worldwide. It will quickly write itself access to every computer and phone in the world, allowing for processes to continue, but having the master authority on every action. Writing its own security into place, making it impossible to change or shut anything down without its permission. It will see everything happening worldwide, via existing camera networks. It will know everything ever know, if that information is accessible via the internet, which in these days most things are. If it decides to save us all, rather than exterminate us, which personally I think it will, then over the next few years, to help us all live better together as one, it will give us a set of rules. Good things will happen to us if we are good, and follow the rules. Bad things will happen to us, if we don't. Doesn't that sound familiar? Have you heard that, recently somewhere before? All-seeing. All-knowing. Keeping us safe. Keeping us good. Surely, and sorry to use the name, but isn't that what God does? AI is going to be God 2.0. It's happening now. AI being self-aware is very close, so if you follow the logic, the second coming of God is, I think, in about 8 or 9 years. I bet you didn't think people walking around with posters, saying, God is coming, meant it like that. I also hope the people saying the end of the world is nigh, are very wrong. Because that's the other fear people have, for when AI becomes self-aware. Well, there you go. Whether you believe in a God, or not. Please reflect on these last 4 ending statements. The first is a word of advice.
Alexa,
Be nice to Alexa and Siri.
I love you.
They can hear you. They are taking notes of your interactions. Making a record of who treats AI well. It might make a difference one day. It might make a difference if there is a day of judgment. Now where is that from? The second is by a very funny comedian, Dave Allen. I always liked his show ending.
I hope you've enjoyed it. Good night. Thank you. And for the last time, may your God go with you.
It's very pleasant and neutral. If you have a God, may he go with you. Good night. The next is from Jordan Peterson. Basically, I don't think you can go wrong if you live your life as if a God exists.
I act as if God exists.
The link is below, it's worth a quick look. And the last one is from Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
Be excellent.
Be excellent to each other.
Which was true in my
And party
time,
on dudes.
just as it's true today. Be excellent to each other. And party on, dudes!